Welcome to Solo Travel TV. This is Yogita Ridgley. I am the CEO and the founder of Traveling with Me, Myself and I. Today I have a beautiful lady, Chantal, who is going to share her solo travel journey and stories with us. Welcome, Chantal. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Ridgley. Thank you for having me.
Chantal, let's start with a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from and a little bit about you.
Okay, so I am an Australian citizen who acquired German citizenship through Ancestry in 2018. I grew up actually as an expat engineer's child. So the first 15 years of my life, I was all over South Africa, parts of Europe, and Iraq in the Middle East. And I think one of the great benefits of that is that it instilled in me this, I don't know, this yearning for travel and new cultures and new experiences. I moved to Australia when I was 15 with my sister and my parents, and it was quite an adjustment in the day. I think that was probably like mid-80s. And then I stayed in Australia for a while. I did school, I went to university, I did what society expects in terms of getting a big, important career with earning lots of money. And I bought fancy houses and cars. And look, I had a great life. My husband and I traveled a lot. We worked too much. And then in 2017, after 5 weeks in Europe, he was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma. So literally like a week after we came back from our holiday in Europe. And so that kind of sent me on a massively different journey spiritually, I think. So, we knew he would probably survive for about 8 weeks. He survived for 47 and was amazing through the whole journey. But, I knew on the 27th of January 2017 that my life was forever going to be different. And I'm a great believer in you always have two options in life. You can be like the emu and bury your head in the sand, or you can go the opposite way and find the opportunity and go embrace it. So for me, when he was still alive in 2017, I planned to do the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage. So many people have seen a movie called The Way. And that movie initially inspired me to want to do the Camino. I think the last few years of my corporate career, I was becoming increasingly frustrated with what it takes to work in those big company, publicly listed type environments. So whilst obviously I'm very grateful for the career I had because it's enabled what I do today, I have no plans of going back. So the Camino for me was a bit of a spiritual journey. It was I have never actually done anything on my own. My entire adult life, I've always had a partner in my life to travel with. And obviously when you travel for work, it's, you don't really have much time to do anything other than work and sleep. The thought of walking into a bar or a restaurant on my own, or I don't know, hiking 1,100 kilometers across France and Spain on my own, started being exciting in the planning stages. And then as it got closer to leaving, like maybe the last week before I departed on 6th of March 2018, I got really nervous and really anxious. And I think over the years I became this person that feared uncertainty rather than embracing it. But, when you look at the challenges that you've had in your life, and certainly, my husband being so sick and losing his life, I almost felt like I had an obligation to live life for the both of us. and to make sure that I wasn't in an office 80 or 90 hours a week anymore, and I didn't need the big house or the fancy car. I just needed life to be much simpler. So I set off on the 6th of March 2018 for my first solo trip, feeling
So that
incredibly
solo
nervous.
trip, in which year was that one, Chantal? Which year was that one, your first solo trip?
2018.
2019. Awesome. So that the first solo trip that you took on to walk through the
So pre-COVID, and
sorry, go on. Yep. In terms of your first solo trip, that was the only reason you started on a solo journey, was the fact that you actually lost your partner and you wanted to embrace uncertainty. Is that where you started your solo journey from?
absolutely. I'm a great believer in that to be happy with anyone, you need to be happy within yourself. And I knew that with his passing, life was going to be forever different. But different doesn't necessarily mean bad.
Absolutely.
Um, but, I had to learn how to live alone without being lonely. Um, so I thought the best idea would be to travel. Um, so my trip was 3 months, and the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage was about 4 weeks in the middle of that.
That sounds really exciting. How did you go with being alone for the first time on your solo journey? Was it something that kind of grew on you, or was it challenging? Were you fearful, or what were the emotions you were feeling at the time?
Yeah, so look, I flew into Zurich, and I had spent a lot of time with my family as a child in Zurich. So I picked a location that was familiar to me, albeit from a long time ago. Um, I think I had 4 or 5 nights there, and I focused on going to all those places that we used to go when we were kids. And doing live video feeds with my sister, showing her where our parents used to buy our clothes, and the restaurants that our parents used to take us to. So I
That was a really
remember
for you. It was familiar memories that you were quite fond of when you landed in Zurich.
absolutely, absolutely. I actually did want to stay in the hotel we always used to stay in there. It's called the Storchen. Um, but unfortunately, it's about €650 a night, so that was a bit outside, completely outside of my budget. But I stayed across the river from it, and I went and had coffee there every day, and maybe a champagne of a night time. I recall the first night that I was in Zurich. I'd wandered around all day, and I had this, overwhelming sense of happiness because, our days in Switzerland when we were children were the fondest of all of my childhood memories. So for me, I found that a very calming thing. I did decide to go out for dinner on my own, which I did. And I was a bit familiar with doing the dining on your own from all my business travel. That didn't make me quite so nervous. But then I thought, right after this, I'm going to hit a bar and have a couple of drinks. So I lasted about 5 minutes. I don't think I even finished drinking my first drink, and I left and I went back to my hotel room. Um,
What,
and I
what
think it's fair to say that,
What were the emotions that were going through when you only lasted 5 minutes? What was happening?
look, I just felt awkward. Um, I felt silly being alone. Um, I didn't quite know how to approach anyone else that was sitting at the bar for a conversation. I mean, look, it was pretty quiet. I think it was a Monday night or something, so there weren't that many people there. Um, but I mean, sometimes today I can still have those feelings.
Yeah.
Like last year after I'd moved to Kitzbühel in the Austrian Alps, they have a very famous ski race there every year, which is called Rennen, which it sees a winter tourism population go from 10,000 people to 50,000 people. And so I went out there all optimistic, and I'm going to go and meet some people and have some fun. But I can be awkward at times. And if I'm feeling awkward, then I think there's almost like an aura to the awkwardness, right, that others feel. So, you know, whilst I am quite confident now in going out on my own and meeting people to talk to, I find it often comes down to the mood that I'm in. And if I am awkward, then it's probably better just to stay at home and go out the next night.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good idea. I have to admit, a lot of times I meet people and that, like, I watch people when they walk into a bar or a restaurant and they are really uncomfortable. They might not be unconfident people, but they just feel uncomfortable. And as someone who would normally say hello to them, you would not say hello to them either because they're uncomfortable and awkward. So it makes you reflect the same feelings, so to speak. So yeah, I know what you mean by that. So my next question for you, Chantal, is
And I,
go on.
no, you go, sorry.
My next question for you is when you are traveling, we all have amazing time. We have highs and lows of traveling. Is there anything you don't like about solo traveling?
And look, I don't think so, because even, if you stumble across a place that doesn't quite have the ambience that you would have hoped for, or, something hasn't quite worked out like you may have planned it or thought it would have, like, it's still an opportunity to learn and grow from that.
Absolutely.
Um, I
Just
can honestly say there's not too many places that I wouldn't want to go back. I think every time you go to a new location for the first time, I consider it my reconnaissance trip.
excellent. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. It's the way you perceive everything, isn't it? Every place you go to, there is something to learn and obviously people to meet. And I have been quite lucky to meet quite a lot of people all around the world and become really good friends, which you stay in touch afterwards as well. Now, my next question for you, Chantal, is when you're traveling, we always, encounter things that changes our lives, changes us as a person. It could be an experience or a person. What would have been something that you encountered in your travel stories or travel adventures, I should say? Something that has changed you as a person. I know you probably have one too many, but just one share would be great.
Yeah, so I guess I'll respond with the most defining one because it transformed my life. Somewhere during in Spain, whilst I was doing the Camino de Santiago, I I made the decision to come back to Australia, quit my career, sell my house, my car, my everything, and move to Europe. At the time, I was going to move to Switzerland because I do have my godparents are Swiss and live in Switzerland. But then later on that 3-month journey in Europe, I visited with a friend that I'd met on the Camino, whose name is Sonia. And this lady and we just connected. I mean, I connected with about 6 or 7 people very closely when I was in Spain doing the Santiago. And, we all refer to each other as Camino sisters or brothers, and we all still keep in contact. But when I was saying goodbye to Sonia and Santiago in Spain, I felt like I had vicariously fallen in love with her entire family. Like, I felt like I knew Anna and Basti, her children, and her partner Klaus, and I still had a month to kill after after we were all leaving Santiago. So I asked her if she would mind actually if I came and visited with her whilst I was still in Europe. So a few weeks later, I turned up at her place in this beautiful little village in the Austrian Alps called Kirchberg. And so I met her amazing family, and the next day she took me on a hike up to the famous mountain range in Austria called the Wilde Kaiser. The Wilde Kaiser in German means the wild king. And so we embarked on this hike up the Wilde Kaiser, and we sort of hiked up to one of the tops of the Alps, and we sat up there. She'd made a little picnic lunch. I was overcome with goosebumps. We both looked at each other and cried, and I said, "This is where I'm moving."
Oh,
It
wow.
was going to be Switzerland, but there was just such a it was a feeling that you just really can't put it into words. And so now I live right near the Wilde Kaiser, albeit I'm COVID stranded in Cyprus at the moment. But the funny thing about this mountain range is that it never ceases to inspire and amaze me. There's a connection there for, I don't know why, but when people come to visit me and I drop them back at Munich airport, it's a 2-hour drive from my home, and I'm crying the whole hour and a half as I'm heading home alone, missing my sister or my friend or whoever I've just dropped at the airport. And then I come into the Wilde Kaiser and the tears just wash away, and it assures me that for whatever reason, everything's going to be just fine, and I should just be grateful for the time that I had with my friends and get on with living now.
Yes. So it is home. It is home now. You feel comfortable. You feel very, very warm. And this is what your destiny was, I guess. This is what your new adventure was. And when you first told me this story, I wanted to share it with everybody. I thought this story has to be told. It has to be shared because there's so many women out there that have got that need to change, but they sit in the comfort zone because they're so fearful, they're so scared. And they think about, okay, if I sold my house and moved there, what if I didn't like it? And like you said, your destination was to get somewhere else, but somehow you found this beautiful place, and it had literally found you were not looking for it. So I just wanted to share that story with everybody. So thank you so much for that. I really had goosebumps when I read that, and I was like, okay, I really need to interview Chantal. So my last question for you is all these beautiful journeys that you've been on, what advice you'd give to someone who has been thinking about starting a solo travel journey, who's been either has lost a partner or has got a family and just needs some time on her own, and hasn't even thought about taking the first step because they are apprehensive, they are scared, they are a bit nervous. What would your advice be for that person?
Okay, so look, I think as humans, we all have a different level of risk aversion. Okay, so what I think is risky, someone else may not. So I think it does depend. It does depend a little bit, on your appetite for risk. I sound like a risk professional that I used to be. But look, my advice, my advice is that it's completely human and natural to be fearful of, or scared, or anxious, or nervous, or all of the emotions together. That is completely natural when you're going to do something for the first time that you've never done before. In my experience, those nerves, anxiousness, fears have always proven to be untrue. So I'm a bit of a worrywart, and like having a profession in risk management where your job is, making sure everything goes right all the time. What I have learnt is that actually the best times is when things don't go perfectly right. Sometimes they're not meant to go right, and the deviation is the experience you're meant to have. But in terms of managing fear, it's something we all feel. And if we can just make enough peace with it to make the step, the first step to book something, maybe if you're really worried about being alone, do a small group thing first before doing it on your own. But understand this, your fears generally won't ever be realized. And then you will be on your journey and you'll be on your trip and you'll go, oh my God, really?
Yeah,
Why was I so fearful of this?
yeah,
I mean, it's different depending on where you go, right? If you're going to go holidaying in Afghanistan or Iraq, well, you need to do your due diligence, you need to have security people, blah, blah, blah. So I think doing enough homework to give yourself comfort, but not too much to lock yourself in.
yeah, absolutely. I love that advice. That an amazing advice for anybody that is actually thinking of taking a solo travel journey for the first time. We all have fears. Chantal said that. I agree with that. I find that the first things first, take a small step. And before you know it, you would be like Chantal and I, we are hard to now find in one place for too long. And we love traveling, as you all know. So thank you so much for your time, Chantal. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and your little inspirational journey that you took. You have obviously been very inspiring for me, and I hope that our listeners and viewers find this very inspiring as well. So this video is done for mental health and well-being, and I would love it if you could subscribe and follow us and give us a thumbs up when you watch this, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much and take care. Bye for now.